May 1982, the South Atlantic, 0300 hours. Somewhere in the darkness, a small team of men are paddling toward an Argentine-held island. No air support, no backup, no margin for error. The water temperature is 3 degrees above freezing. Their faces are blackened. Their weapons are wrapped in waterproof bags strapped to their chests. They are not SAS. They are not Royal Marines. They are something older, something quieter, something that has been operating in the shadows of Britain's most classified conflicts since the Second World War. They are the Special Boat Service, the SBS, and the Argentines on that island have absolutely no idea they are coming. 1. Origins. To understand the SBS, you have to go back to one of the most desperate periods in British military history, 1940. Nazi Germany has swept across Western Europe, France has fallen, Britain stands alone, and Winston Churchill, facing an enemy that controls every coastline from Norway to the Bay of Biscay, needs men who can strike back from the sea. Not battalions, not brigades, small teams, silent teams, men who could paddle a folding kayak through enemy-controlled harbors, plant explosives on warships, gather intelligence on fortified beaches, and disappear before dawn. The man who made it happen was a former big game hunter and adventurer named Roger Courtney. So he proved it. One night in 1940, Courtney paddled his folding kayak, completely alone, to HMS Glengyle, a Royal Navy infantry landing ship anchored in the River Clyde. He climbed aboard undetected, walked to the captain's cabin, wrote his initials on the door, and stole a deck gun cover. The next morning, he walked into a meeting of senior Royal Navy officers and dropped the soaking gun cover on the table in front of them. Nobody said a word. Courtney was promoted to captain on the spot and given command of 12 men, the first special boat section in history. From that single act of audacity, one of the world's most elite and most secretive special forces units was born. Through the Second World War, SBS operators conducted some of the most daring raids of the entire conflict. They paddled into Axis-controlled harbors by night to attach limpet mines to enemy shipping, destroying vessels worth millions in tonnage without ever being detected. They inserted ahead of Allied amphibious operations across the Mediterranean, swimming through surf zones in complete darkness, mapping underwater obstacles, identifying beach gradients, marking lanes for invasion forces that would follow. They operated in the Mediterranean, the Aegean, the rivers of Burma, the fjords of Norway. One of the most celebrated SBS operations of the Second World War was the Cockleshell Heroes mission of December 1942. A team of Royal Marines, forerunners of what would become the SBS, paddled over 100 kilometers up the Gironde estuary in occupied France in freezing temperatures to attach limpet mines to German shipping in the port of Bordeaux. Of the 10 men who launched, only 2 survived to make it back to Britain, but the ships they targeted, carrying critical war supplies, were destroyed. That willingness to accept catastrophic personal risk in pursuit of a mission objective has defined the SBS ever since. After the war, the unit went through several transformations. Special Boat Company in 1951, and on the 28th of July 1987, formally designated the Special Boat Service, taking on full responsibility for Britain's maritime counter-terrorism mission. Their motto, by strength and guile, not speed, not firepower, not numbers, strength and guile. 4 words that have defined every mission these men have ever run. 2. Selection and training. Before we get into the operations that have cemented the SBS as one of the most lethal units on Earth, smash that like button and subscribe right now. Every single week we go deep inside the world's most elite special forces units, and you do not want to miss what is coming at the end of this video. Now, let's talk about what it actually takes to earn the SBS badge. Most SBS operators come from one place, the Royal Marines Commandos. And that matters because Royal Marines training is not ordinary military training. It runs for 32 weeks. That is twice as long as British Army basic training and one of the longest infantry training programs in the Western world. Recruits must pass the commando tests, a series of brutally demanding physical assessments, including a 30-mile speed march across Dartmoor in under 8 hours. In full combat kit, a 9-mile speed march completed in under 90 minutes, and the famous Tarzan assault course. The beret that comes at the end, the Green Beret, is one of the most respected military qualifications in Britain, and it is only the beginning for the men who want to reach the SBS. SBS selection is identical to 22 SAS selection. Both units use the same filter, the same mountains. It begins in the Brecon Beacons of South Wales. Candidates carry a Bergen rucksack loaded to 25 kilograms, sometimes more, across 64 kilometers of mountain terrain. Alone, against the clock, in all weather conditions. No instructor to push you, just you and the weight and the clock. Rain, snow, freezing fog, none of it stops the clock. None of it earns you extra time. The mountain does not care how fit you were back at your unit. It cares only about whether you finish. Those who survive the hills move into continuation training. Jungle warfare in the dense rainforest of Belize. Navigation without GPS or landmarks. Living off the land, moving for days without resupply. Then comes combat survival. 24 hours of deliberate starvation and exposure before a resistance to interrogation phase that candidates later describe as the hardest single experience of their lives. Because the men who cannot hold under that pressure cannot be trusted with the access and the information that SBS operators carry. But here is what makes SBS selection different from SAS selection. After all of that, after the hills and the jungle and the interrogation, there is the water. SBS candidates undergo one of the most advanced combat diving programs in any military in the world. Closed-circuit rebreathers that produce zero bubbles, making the diver completely invisible at the surface. Underwater navigation in zero visibility using compass bearings and kick counts. Combat swimming over open ocean distances that would exhaust most competitive athletes. All of it conducted in water temperatures that in the North Sea and North Atlantic hover just above the threshold for cold water incapacitation. The completion rate for the full SBS pipeline, from Royal Marines training through selection through dive qualification, is among the lowest of any Special Forces unit in the world. That no matter how cold the water is, they will keep swimming. 3. Falklands War 1982. Before we get to the classified operations that the British government still will not fully acknowledge, hit that like button right now. New elite unit every single week, and the unit coming next week is one that will genuinely shock you. April 2nd, 1982. Argentina invades the Falkland Islands, a British overseas territory 8,000 miles from the UK. 2,000 Argentine troops seize the islands. The world assumes Britain will negotiate. And before the task force has even sailed halfway down the Atlantic, the SBS is already there. Inserted by submarine in complete darkness, SBS four-man patrols are on the Falkland Islands before the first British ship arrives. They move inland. They establish covert observation posts in the freezing peat moorland. They lie in shallow scrapes in temperatures well below zero, sometimes for over a week, watching Argentine positions, counting troops, identifying vehicle parks, defensive lines, artillery locations. Within visual range of the enemy, sometimes within earshot, not moving, not speaking, not lighting fires, just watching. The intelligence these teams gathered was fed directly into the planning for Operation Corporate, the British campaign to retake the islands. Without that intelligence, the amphibious landings at San Carlos Bay could have sailed into a prepared Argentine defense. Instead, on the night before the main landing, May 20th, 1982, SBS teams conducted a series of diversionary raids on the opposite side of the islands. They attacked Argentine positions. They created noise. They created the impression of a major assault. The Argentines responded. They shifted forces. They looked east, and the main British landing happened at San Carlos Bay without opposition. The SBS also played a critical role in Operation Parakeet, the recapture of South Georgia Island. In conditions that defied any rational operational planning, blizzard force winds, whiteout conditions, a helicopter crash on a glacier, a submarine grounding in shallow water, SBS and SAS teams pressed on. South Georgia was retaken. The Argentine garrison of 156 men surrendered to a British force a fraction of their size. It was the first British land victory of the Falklands War. And when the Argentine commander surrendered, the man he surrendered to was leading an SBS team. 4. Operation Barras, IRAQ and AFGHAANS stand. September 2000. Sierra Leone. A British Army patrol, 11 men of the Royal Irish Regiment, has been seized by a West African militia called the West Side Boys. These are not professional soldiers. They are a volatile, heavily armed, drug-fueled gang operating from a jungle village called Gaberi Bana in the swamps of Sierra Leone. They have British soldiers. They have made clear they are willing to execute them. Negotiations have stalled. The clock is running. D Squadron SAS and a team of SBS operators plan Operation Barras, a dawn assault on Gaberi Bana. The planning is meticulous. Aerial reconnaissance from patrols, hours of rehearsal on a mock-up of the village layout. At first light on September 10, 2004, Chinook and Lynx helicopters descend on Gabaribana from multiple directions simultaneously. SAS operators fast rope into the compound before the West Side boys have fully woken up. What follows is 20 minutes of some of the most intense close-quarters fighting of any British Special Forces operation since the Falklands. When it is over, all 11 hostages are alive. 25 West Side boys are dead. 18 are captured. One British soldier, Sergeant Simon Morley, is killed in action. 2001, Afghanistan. Working alongside CIA paramilitary teams, Delta Force and the SAS in some of the most dangerous terrain on Earth. Their role, direct action raids against Al-Qaeda and Taliban leadership, cave complex clearance in the White Mountains, and, most critically, the hunt for Osama bin Laden himself. At Tora Bora in December 2001, as coalition aircraft pounded the mountain cave complexes where bin Laden was believed to be sheltering, SBS teams were on the ground, directing airstrikes, clearing tunnels, operating in close-quarters combat inside cave systems where a wrong turn could put you face-to-face with the enemy in a space the size of a bathroom. The full details of what the SBS did at Tora Bora remain classified to this day. 2003. Iraq, SBS teams deployed to the Western Desert. Their mission? Scud hunting. Iraqi Scud missile launchers, mobile, fast-moving, and capable of triggering a catastrophic escalation if they hit Israel, are the single most dangerous threat to coalition strategy in the early days of the war. SBS patrols range hundreds of kilometers into the desert. They find the launchers, they call in airstrikes. They operate without resupply for weeks at a time in vehicles packed with water ammunition and satellite communications equipment. And through the long years of the Iraqi insurgency and the Afghan campaign, the SBS runs what becomes known as the most sensitive mission set in the British Special Forces inventory. The unit that goes in when the target is on or near the water. The unit that goes in when the approach has to be completely undetected. The unit that goes in when failure is not an option. 5. Modern SBS and capabilities. Today, the Special Boat Service is headquartered at Royal Marines Pool in Dorset, right on the water. Because the SBS never goes far from the water, the unit operates 4 active squadrons. Each has specific specializations within the broader SBS mission profile, and the level of capability concentrated inside those squadrons is extraordinary. Underwater, swimmer delivery vehicles, miniature submarines that carry entire teams to their objective completely submerged. Diver propulsion vehicles that allow individual combat swimmers to cover kilometers of ocean floor without surfacing. Closed-circuit rebreathers that leave absolutely zero trace on the water surface. Above water, rigid inflatable boats capable of 50 knots in open ocean. Helicopter insertion by fast rope, rappel or static line from any British military rotary wing platform. And halo and ha-ho parachute insertion from altitudes high enough to keep the aircraft beyond the range of most air defense radar systems. In the close quarters environment, ship corridors, oil platform gangways, aircraft cabins, hostage rooms, the SBS carries suppressed HK-MP5 submachine guns, Glock 17 sidearms, and breaching charges precision-engineered to blow a door or a hatch without injuring the people on the other side. They train for every scenario the maritime domain can produce. A hijacked cruise liner, a terrorist attack on a North Sea oil platform, a submarine rescue mission, a harbor denial operation in advance of an amphibious landing. If a North Sea oil rig is taken by terrorists tonight, the SBS goes in, by sea, in darkness, without warning. If a British-flagged vessel is hijacked in international waters, the SBS goes in. If a hostile state attempts to seize British maritime infrastructure, the SBS goes in. And the last thing the people inside that seized vessel will see, before the hatches blow and the lights go out and the SBS comes through the door, is a brief flash of light from a stun grenade. By strength and guile. The Special Boat Service has been operating in the shadows of British military and naval history since 1940. Through 6 decades of conflict, never held press conferences, never published memoirs, the British government has spent those same 6 decades confirming as little as possible about what these men actually do. They were born in a folding kayak on the River Clyde. They grew up in the surf zones of the Mediterranean and the frozen waters of the South Atlantic. They have hunted war criminals in the Balkans, targeted insurgents in the deserts of Iraq and the mountains of Afghanistan, and stood ready at every moment of every day to go wherever Britain needs them to go. Into the water, onto the ship, through the door, by strength and guile. If this video hit different, smash that like button right now and subscribe, because next week we are going inside a unit that most people in the Western world have never even heard of. South Korea already gave us the ROK Navy UDT to SEAL, the maritime warriors who rescued 21 hostages in 4 minutes in the Arabian Sea. But South Korea has another unit, a land-based counterterrorism force so secretive, so ruthlessly trained, and so brutally effective that the South Korean government spent years refusing to confirm it even existed. We are talking about the 707th Special Mission Battalion. The unit built for one purpose and one purpose only, to storm aircraft, buildings, and hostage sites on South Korean soil, and eliminate every single threat without losing a single hostage. And their combat record, including operations that have never been officially acknowledged by Seoul, is extraordinary. Next week, right here. You do not want to miss it. Like, subscribe. We'll see you inside.